also like to acknowledge I would also like to acknowledge their ancestors. We recognize these Indigenous people of this land and honor their history. We welcome you all today to honor our future and working together, and I commit to continuing to learn about the Indigenous people of our community. With that, I would like to introduce our speakers today. Carmi Holguin is the co-founder and executive director of, and Carmi, I'm going to ask you to pronounce the name of the initiative so I don't get this wrong. And do you mind sharing the pronunciation of the initiative?
Nááts'íilid.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Her broad experience in construction and management has previously worked as a journeyman insulation installer, a site interior wall foreman, and a construction purchasing manager, and a procurement and proposal manager. Carmi was selected in the 2020-2021 Change Labs Business Incubator Program, which supported the establishment and growth of the initiative as a nonprofit business through funding, advisory services, and professional development resources. As an emerging entrepreneur, she always puts her traditional values first, an ethos she learned from her parents and grandparents. Welcome, Carmi. Thank you for being here. I'd also like to introduce Kara Dukapu. She's the Director of Community Programs with the initiative and which is an Indigenous-led and coalition-driven community development collaborative. They build sweat equity homes and other infrastructure developments in a variety of different communities around the Navajo Nation and on Navajo Nation lands. Kara is Diné, and she was born, oh goodness, Kara, I'm going to have you do this yourself because again, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm going to say this incorrectly and I don't want to offend. So I will let you both introduce yourselves as well and give us your ancestry. Thank you again to Carmi and Kara for being here today. We're looking forward to learning from you.
Thank you. Nááts'íilid sé Carmi Ray Blackwater Holguin sé Kiani Shlon Kilachini Bushchin Ashin Dashe Hanagani A Dashnala Auto Danahoto Donasha. Hello everyone, my name is Carmi Ray Blackwater Holguin. I am a member of the Towering House, born for the Red House. My maternal grandparents are the Salt people. Paternal grandparents are the One Who Walk Around clan. I am from Danahoto, Arizona. Kara?
Greetings, everyone. Nááts'íilid sé Kara Dukbo Yanyashia. My Deshki Nishle Ado Kabaha Ada Shibashin, Ziglani Ada Chanela Ado Torich Ada Shache, Ado Nashasha Ada Shama, and Osapovi Yanyashia. And so greetings, I just introduced myself in my language, which is Dene language. I am born for the Coyote Pass people. I am of the Coyote Pass people, born for the Water's Edge people, and my maternal grandparents are the Bitterwater people, and my paternal grandparents are of the Mountain Edge people. I am also an adopted granddaughter of the Tewa Bear clan, and I have been given the name Osapovi. And so I'm really happy to be here with you all. And yeah, so I'll send it back to Carmi, and I just want to say thank you to Kelly and Serena and everyone for inviting us here and letting us share our work.
So do we go ahead and begin our presentation now?
Yes, please.
Yes,
okay,
sure.
All right, cool, awesome. Well, good morning, everyone. Nááts'íilid. Again, we're a Nááts'íilid initiative. We're next slide. We're a nonprofit organization that is operating here on the Nation, specifically in Danahoto, which is a northern portion of the Navajo Nation near the Four Corners. We're independent of any government or institution, so we're like our own nonprofit organization. Next one. Our story. Next slide. So Nááts'íilid was a collaboration that was development through Project Lone Tree. So originally, I used to be administrative assistant for a project that was called Danahoto Chapter Sweat Equity program. And Danahoto Chapter Sweat Equity received a large amount of money from the Nááts'íilid. So they were a subrecipient to Navajo Housing Authority. And through that program, They developed a sweat equity housing program where they selected 30 people, they were working in 3 chapters, Danahoto, Kianta, Chilchimbito, and they selected 10 families from each of the chapters. And each of the families in each chapter, they were supposed to help build each other's home. So they were supposed to build like a ecological building system in the community, where one family builds one home and then they continue to build each other's home until the last home was completed. So that was the idea of the sweat equity housing program. And the program was just to buy the material and then to buy and have the families build it themselves. And that way we didn't have to pay for labor or anything like that. And through the planning phases of this construction program, there was like a lot of barriers that were put up by regulations of Nááts'íilid through NHA. So then it became very like the program started to fold in different ways. And then so to continue the project, and we had to reach out to Design Build Bluff to get floor plans, to get design plans of how we can build a home and to think about how a home can be built. But instead of using their existing floor plans, we developed a new floor plan that was more a model that was for sweat equity. And the model that we incorporated into the home was that thinking about traditional building spaces, traditional practices in the space. And here in our home, you see the kitchen area, there's an earthen floor, and then also the plastering on the walls are natural plastering, sand plastering, and these are all materials that are harvest. And then it's really thinking about the home, using as much materials from the home site as much as possible, then trucking in materials from nearby towns that have these like corporate chains of material stores, and just using as much materials. Next slide. So unfortunately, the Danahoto chapter sweat equity program folded, and but we only had one recipient of our sweat equity housing program, and that was the couple in the picture. And then from there, we regrouped and we worked together with the community. We listened to the community. We held asset mapping workshops and design workshops, listening to what the community's needs and wants were and how to move forward about, how to address the issues of housing. And from there, this isn't workshop that we did in Bluff. We had community leaders, we had community members, we also had engineers from University of Utah. We had we had community elected officials, and we had other people that were part of our workshop, and just listening and engaging to what the needs were. And from there, what we decided was that, is a community development corporation needed to establish, and we were in the right timing of establishing our corporation. Next slide. And through that process, I was selected to be part of Change Lab, and Change Lab is what really gave us the identity of Nááts'íilid initiative. And I got to name the nonprofit organization Nááts'íilid, and Nááts'íilid means rainbow. It represents our Diné people, our emergence story, our sovereignty, homelands. And then also in our logo, you see the male and female rainbow gods, and you see the yin has the male Hogan, and then the I has the female Hogan. So those are like interpretation and who we are as an organization. Like in our beliefs and Diné beliefs is that we're half men and half women, and that's also part of our development of our organization. Next slide. And then from there, from the takeaway of our community workshops, we develop our mission statement is like we strengthen the culture and economic resilience of the Neta through self-reliance and initiatives in the built environment. And then also we develop our values, which is in the net teaching when we were given the form of the 5-fingered people, which is the human, is we were given Nááts'íilid, Nááts'íilid, Sihasin, and Ina. And how does that play into our initiative is that Nááts'íilid is planning, thinking, Nááts'íilid is planning, design, and we have Nááts'íilid, which is thinking, is educating and training people within our community. Hassan is building an environment. How do we build for our people and work together? And then we have enterprise development, which is how do we make a living? And like that, those are some of the takeaways that we created through our community workshops. Next slide. And then from there, after we became a nonprofit organization and we've identified the need of what needed to happen in the communities, we started applying for grants, and the grants that we did receive supported our initiatives. So the initiative that we have is a Sweat Equity Home Project, which is housing capacity building and cultural resilience. We have electrifying and broadband. The Comb Ridge is infrastructure and capacity building. And then Walking with Danetka is cultural resilience, public memory work, and community development. And then we have our Humanities in Place, which is community engagement, collective action, and cultural equity. Next slide. Our team, next slide. So right now, our team is 5 fierce women. So like in honor of International Women's Month, like we're a group of 5 people. We're 5 women. Myself, I'm Navajo, the executive director and co-founder. There's Kara, who's also Navajo, and she's our director of community programs. And then we have Alicia Charlie, who's our research fellow. She's Navajo and from the inside the community as well. And then we have Tonya Singh Chi, who is Taiwanese. She's our project architect and co-founder. And then we have Shadana Yosef, who is Iranian, and she's our grant writer and our co-founder. So we're like the structure of Nááts'íilid, and we're like the ones that are operating right now, and we're like doing the capacity building, like the construction process, and like we're doing a lot of planning of what we're trying to accomplish through our initiative. Next slide. And then we have our Nááts'íilid board. We have our board chair, who is Jose Galarza, and then we have Hiroko Yamamoto. She's our board treasurer as well. She's from Japan. Jose is from Puerto Rico. And then we have Adrian, who is our board secretary. She's from Poland. And then we have former delegate Nathaniel Brown, who is also on our advisory board and also co-founder of Nááts'íilid Initiative. So like we're a collective group, and we've all been in the area for so long that we just came together and we created Nááts'íilid. And so that's like who we are as our team. Next slide.
Carmi,
Our design. Yes.
can I just ask a quick question?
Mm-hmm.
So that group it's diverse, right? You have people from
Yes.
Japan. How did that all come together?
So we all came together, Jose, Adrian, and Hiroko. They're all from Design Build Bluff, Utah, which is a University of Utah's architectural design program, that they have a engineering program that they have students from University of Utah that come down to the Navajo Nation and build homes in the area. They created a form. We developed a form of sweat equity, is where the students work with a homeowner participant based on the 2017 program. They didn't have sweat equity implied into their building program. They used to just build homes for families in the area. But after 2017, working with them, I helped them like develop the sweat equity housing program into their organization, where they learn from the homeowner, and then they learn from the homeowner learns from the students, the building trades, and like how to do construction, how to read blueprints. And then the homeowner, in return, they teach them about the culture value, the landscape, and like the traditional values of what it means to be Dene, because most of their projects are here on the Utah side of the Dene. So that's like their collaboration. And then with Tonya and Shadana, they're professors with University of infrastructure programs that are around natural earth building. So that's how our collaboration began, and that's like how we all became involved, was through the 2017 project. that we started working together, and from there we just came together like a big ball, and then like we just started spinning in different directions with different ideas and creative imaginations, and that created Nááts'íilid. And the other part of it as well is like our colors that we have like here, like on our design team, like our design here, the colors is like kind of like our favorite colors that we all implemented, and that created our rainbow structure as well.
Yeah, John.
Mhm. Okay, so we have our design. Next slide. So our approach is through our sweat equity housing program, and our sweat equity housing program is where sweat equity is one in which our participant applies their own labor through their own work, then a form of contribution through not cash, but building their home with their own hands. So that's like the concept of our sweat equity housing program. And the sweat equity housing, I mean, putting sweat equity into whatever you're building has been something that has been perpetuated in our Diné culture, is that when we work together, we're not supposed to ask for money. That's like part of our value, is we don't ask for money, but we can pay by food, we can pay by making clothes or whatever. So there's always like kind of like a tradesman contribution that's always made for helping someone. And so that's like kind of like the same analysis that we have in our sweat equity housing program, is that we want to carry that trade on, is where one family builds their home and then they pay it forward by helping another family. So they have like 400 sweat equity hours in the construction of their first home, and then they pay it forward in the next home, helping the next homeowner build their home. And then that ends the first contract, but the second contract begins with helping one homeowner build, and then continue cycle. But from that, we want to incorporate, we have to abide by some regulations, and some of those regulations is that they have to be a member of a registered member of the chapters, and the chapters that we're working with is Denhoto, Kienta, and Xochimbito right now. And they have to leave home, they have to have a valid home site leases where they own or are leasing a 1 acre of land, sorry. So that they have to have all the regulations and all of the documents obtaining that they can build a home site lease. And then we have our application process. We interview them, we do site visits, and then if they're selected, we sign a document with them, and then we design their home, and then we go through the whole construction of filtering out the construction drawing set, and then we have additional training, and then they continue their sweat equity housing program. Next slide. So our approach to design and passive energy. So when we look at a Hogan, and when we look at passive energy and creating a model that implements both of them, is that they're very similar into construction, in the structure of how the energy works and energy of the Hogan, how it maintains a home, education, and like training. Next slide. So when we look inside of a Hogan, this is a female Hogan. Our door is always to the east, and each of the pillars inside of the Hogan, they represent different realms, or they represent different traditional storytelling. And it's also kind of like a solar system. There's an opening inside of the middle of a Hogan, and when the sun touches it, like certain parts of the season or certain parts of the year, that means the seasons are changing, and that you can start talking about different stories. And that's kind of like what this represents. And next slide. And this is what the inside of a Hogan looks. It's very beautiful, and it's made with juniper trees, and these are materials that are harvested from the Four Sacred Mountains. And that's the traditional way of building a Hogan. So each of these realms, or each of these layers of wood, they have like certain songs, they have certain prayers. And most of all, like when we as Diné people, this is our first home, this is our classroom, this is our kitchen, this is our craft area, this is like everything. And like, how do we incorporate that into our sweat equity housing program? And it's like, it's been a roller coaster, but but we want to stay with who we are, and we want to be identified with our homes, and to preserve our culture and to preserve our language. This is where it all begins. It begins with a home. Next slide. So when we look, this is a home site lease. This is the current our sweat equity, our first sweat equity home participant. This is his energy model that we've done from his home site lease. And the first participant that we have is from here, from Danahoto. And this is his home site lease. He's like south of Danahoto and like just right off the highway. And when we look at his energy model and the location of his home is like positioning and following the solar system and following like what the passive energy of when, like, you know, when the hot months are, like which direction can we position the home, and is it going to be colder or hotter, and how can we reduce the carbon fiber of having like electric heating units and electric cooling units, and how can we heat a home that is natural? Because if you live in a hogan, there's a natural heating system. Like during the summer, during the winters, you can build a fire and it warms up on the inside, and you don't have to build a fire like all day to keep your house warm. And then the same thing with the summer, you just wet the floor and your house is nice and cool, and you don't have to like buy an air conditioner. Like the natural dirt, the natural earth has a heating and cooling system, and like how do we incorporate that? So this is like our study of what the passive energy is like for the home site, and how does that relate to being our traditional stories. Next slide. And then it connects back to the story of our creation story as the Net people, and understanding the songs and prayers and the thoughts of what a hogan represents and what it means. So in part of our creation story, we have like we have Changing Woman, who the hogan was created for her, and through that process that she was given the 8 phases of life of being an infant, toddler, child, youth, like a young adult, parent, grandparent, and elder, or like a teacher. And it's a repeated cycle, and each phase of life, they have different meanings, and they have different representation through this construction process, of well as building a home. Like we have like the planning process, like is like also like considered like an infant or toddler. You know, when a toddler is learning how to communicate, learning how to think about stuff, you know, it's kind of like the phases of that. And then there's the adolescent phase. When you begin construction, you start to see the structure go up, and it's like the physical body formation of a female. You know, you start to see like the physical changes, or the physical features of a female, as well as the adolescence phase. And that's like the construction. You start to see how things are starting to come together. And then the parent phase is like where, when you have your family, you move your family into the home, you become a parent. You start to think about how your family is going to live, how they're going to live into the home. And then after you lived in your home for a long period of time, your home becomes a grandparent. And when your home becomes a grandparent, you know, if the window's broken, you replace it. If the light fixtures need to be replaced, you need to replace it. It automatically tells you what to do, and you know that responsibility to be a homeowner. So those are kind of like phases and like construction, and that's like one of the ways of the traditional hogan was explained to me from an elder in our community, that, you know, there's a phase, there's like a physical feature and a physical phase of it, but you don't think about it in that way, but it just happens automatically. And so that's part of our like approach to our sweat equity housing program. Next slide. And then here is our design. When we think about design models, we want to incorporate like the female and the male, and how do they work together, and how does the spaces look? And here, this is just like a model that it was just a model at the time. It's just a female, like the female is like a communal area, and the male portion is like the private quarters. So this was just a model at the time. Next slide. And then we started to think about the spaces again of sweat equity. Like, how does the space, like if the family moves into the home, how can there be like one space is like a private side, and then another space that can be a communal side? And then how do we implement like the form of sweat equity if the family wanted to expand on their own? And if they wanted to, if we like selected a younger family and they wanted to add more family members in the future, but we're only building for like 4 people right now, but they're 4 or 5 more kids, and like, how do we plan for that? And so we decided that maybe having an offset home would be the best idea, and they can expand in any direction. So that was kind of like the concept. And then having like the female and the male model of the home design, and then just different ideas of what natural materials or resources that are available in the area we could use. Next slide. So then again, like with our first sweat equity home participant, we decided that we wanted to go with ram earth. And ram earth is like a natural material that can be harvested. It's like dirt, or compact it, and you design, or you compact it into these like walls, and you just ram it down. And it's very similar to the construction of a hogan, excuse me. It's very similar to the construction of a hogan by using natural sand from the home site and using a lot of this natural material. But the only thing that we come across is that here on the Navajo Nation, we have like different climate. There's some areas that are sandier. There's some areas that have gravel. So the closest resource that we can find to Danahoto that has the perfect mixture for our ram earth is in Bluff. So we'll be trucking in like some of the material from Bluff, and we've already done like some testing models and what that would look like. And it's very, very similar to a traditional hogan. And so that's something that we're excited about. So for our first housing structure, we're going to be doing ram earth. And next slide. So this is how we came up with design Blue Jay. And Blue Jay is going to be part, the communal side, the female side is the north side here. It's going to have the kitchen, the living room, and the dining room. That's going to be our female side. And that one is going to be all ram earth. And then we have the bottom side that is going to be all made of conventional with regular wood structures, and that's the male side of the hogan. And the reason why we had it set up like that is the family is planning to extend their family. They're planning to move additional family members into the home. The family that we have selected is a family of 11 people right now. So they do have 4 people that do come on weekends. During the weekdays, they have 7 of them. And then on weekends, there's 4, but they're planning to continue. And that's another thing from our approach, as well as Nááts'íilid initiative, is that we want to help the larger families. And I'll talk more about that in a bit. But so this is our design right now that we have. And this is called Design Blue Jay. And we already have Nááts'íilid, which is the name of our organization. That's like the female representation. And then our first construction project under Nááts'íilid initiative is Blue Jay. And the structure of the male hogan, if you look at it, it's supposed to represent the head of a blue jay. And I don't want to say it in Navajo because I might get it wrong, but it's kind of tricky how to say the Navajo name and to say Blue Jay in Navajo, but like our first design is called Blue Jay, and this is what we have so far. Next slide. And then our challenges, next slide. So when we did our home site lease or when we did our sweat equity application, we had people that applied. We had 39 people that applied. We had our application up for 6 weeks, and our average size family was between 9 and 10 people, or 5 and 10 people. That was like the average size of a family. And a lot of them were wanting to continue to expand their family. And then from that application, we had like 70 people that said they had their application, and then we had the other percentage that didn't have an application. And when we actually did our home site lease investigation, there was actually probably about 7 of them that did have a home site lease. So there's like a miscommunication and connection, or there's a barrier that's not being connected to the community, is that when they have a home site lease, they have all their documents, but they think they have their home site lease. But when you go to the Navajo Nation home site lease office, there's a miscommunication that all the papers and documents that they're supposed to receive, they're supposed to return it in. So we're helping families to relay that message that they need to turn in those documents. And then again, there's also like employment. There's many of our applicants were employed. They're employed by like the school, which is very popular, being employed by a school, the hospital, or by like local retail stores and stuff like that. And they don't have as much time as they could to put into their homes. So then hours availability, many of them that are unemployed and that don't have the home site lease, they said they can put more than 20 hours into their home. And then others that are employed and that do have a home site lease, they're not able to put more than like 11 to 20 hours a week into their sweat equity housing program. Next slide. And then again, like the other challenges that we face is like, we're like this a Rubik's cubes of a nonprofit organization that's trying to tackle the housing needs here on the Navajo Nation. And our method of housing is not new, but it's something that hasn't been thought about in a different way. Is connecting the traditional building techniques to a conventional type of home. And that makes us kind of like a black sheep, because we have people that connect out to us, that connect or reach out to us, and they want to connect with us, how they can help us. Like they've offered home loan programs, they've offered like more different types of mortgage programs, like affordable housing programs. But when we tell them our approach of what we want to do as an organization and how we want to help people build their home, and how that we want to use natural materials, like what is considered earth construction, and how we want to preserve some of the traditional building practices of a hogan and implement it into our home building. Like a lot of people, they don't have like a proper response of how they could help us. So we kind of feel like we're the black sheep, and then like local government as well. We've reached out to like the Navajo Nation has a loan program. They have several programs, but they don't know how to work with us because we're not abiding by federal guidelines or federal policies of conventional building styles. So they don't know how to help us or how they could work with us. And then the other thing is that when we apply for grants, a lot of grants are only available for public home building, like rentals or rental properties or multiple home programs that people can rent out of. And we're not considered a public program, like we're considered a private home organization. And then earth construction, especially with using mud and natural materials, there's not a whole lot of regulations based around that, like straw bales and other types of natural materials around straw bale. They can be funded by other loan mortgage programs, but it's not the same thing with us as a Navajo Nation. So those are like some of the things that we're coming across. And then the other thing is like there's no sovereignty in home building. Like we live on trust land here, like the Navajo Nation is all trust land, and people won't give you a mortgage to build a home on a trust land because you don't own that land, and it's just entrusted to the tribe. So then there's like really no sovereignty. And then we talk about, how we want to build generational wealth, and we want to have, like in the urban areas, you can develop those wealth by, mortgaging your land, mortgaging your house. But here on Navajo, we can't do that. So like there's a lot of barriers on that. And then challenging the system. When we talk about our type of home style and, where we could get funding and, like all these different barriers that we've come across, is like challenging the system is maybe the system needs to listen to what we want as the Net people. We're in this age, where we can make changes and we can regulate policies, and we have like all these government officials, that really need to advocate that, that conventional home building is not, maybe it's not the future, maybe earth and building is, and that there's other tribes that are trying to also implement this program, that they want to go back to natural building techniques that they have, but the governments are not listening to them. Maybe that's a challenge that we have to do, and that we have to have people listen to us on how we want to build our homes. And then the other part is that we don't have enough people in our community that know traditional building practices. We're trying to preserve our language, we're trying to preserve our culture, but the part that we're missing is preserving our traditional building practice. Once we lose I feel like we've already lost our traditional building practices, and that's why we can't preserve our culture and our language, because to preserve that, it all begins with a home, and that's how our creation stories were created. They were all started from the home, and to preserve that, we have to keep it here. And through the pandemic, we've already lost like so much history, but we've lost so many people that were knowledge keepers inside of the community. And now we don't have a lot of people that we can turn to. So that's like our organization. Next slide. Our solutions. Next slide. Kara. And then like we have this grant for Humanities in Place, and through this Humanities in Place grant from the Mellon Foundation, these are just some of the things that we're hoping to preserve in our communities, and Kara will talk about that.
Yeah, and thank you, Carmi, for that. And so, yeah, so greetings, everyone. So all of the challenges that Carmi mentioned, that those they found out while they were implementing their Sweat Equity Homes project. And along the way, they realized that they really needed to focus on other areas and focus on the Sweat Equity Homes project more holistically. And so they were able to apply for a Mellon Foundation Humanities in Place grant, and they entitled the project Nááts'íilid and Nááts'íilid, which is revitalizing Dene place knowing and placemaking. So Nááts'íilid means like looking or seeing, and Nááts'íilid is like using your hands. And so the whole idea is that we're going to be hosting community workshops for the community. And the whole idea is that we're going to find traditional knowledge keepers in the community to serve as instructors and to teach these different skills. And so one that we're doing is a Hogan. We're helping a domestic violence program in Kayenta build a Hogan structure. And so we're doing little mini workshops for the residents of that area. We're also going to be providing like different webinars for the community. And the whole idea is that we're going to be strengthening and reintroducing traditional knowledge in the community. And so we're also, another part of this HIP, we call it HIP program internally. A part of this HIP program is we're going to, we hired an Indigenous research scholar who's going to go into the community, gather knowledge, and she's going to catalog it, and she's going to create a living open source library that's going to be available to the community members. So the idea is that we're going to have create this database of knowledge that our Indigenous research scholar is going to gather, and it's going to be, we're calling it a living library because it's going to be continuously growing, and it's going to be continuously added, and it's going to be accessible for community members. And so we're hoping to have this different approach in strengthening and reintroducing knowledge. Next slide, please. And so my job as the Director of Community Programs is to identify, again, knowledge keepers in the community. And we're going to be hosting workshops. And so the whole idea is that we're supplementing and we're supporting the Sweat Equity Homes project by creating these workshops. Not only are we going to be introducing like knowledge, but we're also going to be mentoring, and we're also going to be training, because what we found is that a lot of people in our communities are not aware of the traditional knowledges that are held in the community because of, forced assimilation and all of like the generational trauma that comes from it. There's like a disconnect in our communities of the knowledge and also of like the transferring of knowledge. And we felt like the building a home is where we could start this, because the home is so important in Dene. And so like just the whole process of building a home has so many traditional teachings, and also will help us grow emotionally, mentally, physically. And so our whole idea is that we want to create these learning environments for our community. And so one is like reintroducing traditional knowledge through our workshops, and also introducing new technology. You know, as the net people, we're really flexible and we're really resilient in the way that we adapt to our environment around us. And the way that we're doing that is we're looking towards different technology off the reservation and and seeing how we can indigenize it and really not honor it, but, you know, make it our own. And so one way we're doing that is with the rammed earth. You know, rammed earth is not a familiar technology on Navajo. And so our idea is that we're bringing in an outside instructor to teach our people. And hopefully we're hoping that people will embrace it and learn it and adapt it. And so we will be creating our own instructors in a way. So when we continue our sweat equity homes building, we're hoping that we'll be creating our own workforce in that way. So these are just workshops that we're hoping to have this coming year. We've already hosted an intro to solar energy webinar with Native Renewables, which is an amazing Indigenous-led organization. We're also going to be hosting an intro to earth and plaster webinar with a Dene earth and plasterer. We'll be having series of rammed earth workshops in Dene Hotso so we could build this home. And it's all going to be open to the community. We're wanting to do a rubble trench foundation workshop as well, so individuals can learn how to build their own foundation. And then intro to cabinetry, intro to gray water harvesting. And I think like the unique aspect of our organization is our partnerships. We recognize that we can't do this alone. And we're lucky enough to have partnerships with amazing design build schools like Design Build Bluff out of University of Utah and the Yesterday Tomorrow School of Building. And so they're going to be partnering with us on this as well. But yeah, and that's what I have, and I'll turn it back to Carmi. Thank you for your time.
You can go to the next slide, please. So through our Sweat Equity Home program, like here you have structures, we have the whole one or the big sister, we have the Chasha, who's little sister. So the concept of our initiative is that the Sweat Equity Home program is our main initiative that's like the most popular that people are interested in. It's a traditional home building techniques and training. It's natural building, reintroducing earthen building to the community. And then through our little sister, like our Chasha, she's like the person that represents like sustainability and beauty way. And through sustainability is like food culture, cultivation is like introducing how to grow your own food, people, and that's part of like the homeowner training program. And then like financial wellness and planning is like how to budget, how to manage money. I think that's something that hasn't been really talked about among adults, and a lot of people don't know how to manage their credit. So that's something that we want to introduce and teach to the community. And then asset building is like learning through our Sweat Equity Home program is like something that they're strong at and that they can continue to work on and turn it into a enterprise development that they can become contractors, and that could like develop as some type of sustainability, financial sustainability for their home. And then that turns into Beauty Way, Hijoja Ina, the self-resilient home builder. They become self-reliant home builders. They become resilient individuals, families. They take pride in ownership of a home, and they have economic security that they learn from our Sweat Equity Home program. But again, that all comes from cultural survival and healing. One thing that I've learned from another research that I've done back in 2016 through on the Guanajuato chapter Sweat Equity Housing Program is that there's, Kara did mention that, you know, we're facing generational trauma. We're facing like families not being able to communicate and work together, that there's this generational trauma like from boarding schools and like families being taken and putting into like these different oh, what was it called? Like putting into like Mormon homes or like Christian family homes, like they're being taken. And so there's like this connection that I learned from that research is that families don't know how to say I love you. They don't know how to show like affection towards each other, like just saying hello to each other. So those are some of the things that I've learned, and hoping that our Sweat Equity Home program can help some of these families heal, and that they can open their mind and being acceptive towards each other, that, you know, that some family members have different strengths and they have different weaknesses, and how can they communicate and work that. And I feel like through our Sweat Equity Housing program, that can kind of have like a healing process, that they can open up to each other, accept each other, and be able to, you know, have a positive healthy life and a healthy lifestyle. And that all begins with the home, like cultural survival and healing, like the family circle. Like a family can write a poem together, they can write something that in the language that, you know, that they can work towards, maybe even writing a book of what, or journal or whatever, through this Sweat Equity Housing program. And then Nááts'íilid is like, we have these traditionalists in our communities. They have so much knowledge, and, you know, sometimes they want to share their stories, sometimes they don't want to, but we want them to come to our organization and share these stories with homeowners and with volunteers in our group, and share some of those stories. And that kind of helps us preserve the archiving traditional values of who we are as Diné. And that's one of the things that we're. And then the next part is volunteering and network, is having community members inside of our community, and then the families through our Sweat Equity Housing program. And then us as staff, our members of Nááts'íilid, you know, we want to work with our community. We want to volunteer in other groups, and that, you know, how we identify ourselves is through our clan system. You know, we want to be able to identify each other through family, and like everybody that we've worked with, we consider them family, regardless if they're Diné or not. Like we're just this one big giant family. And that's what we want to like introduce as well, is that, you know, the outside of the Sweat Equity family, you know, there's an additional family that want to help them, and that, you know, there's people that want to volunteer. And so it's like allowing the networking part to happen. And then Nááts'íilid is like thinking or like planning, working together. And it's like family, they learn how to collaborate, they learn how to communicate, and they learn their strength and weakness together. And that's something that we're hoping that we can do through our Sweat Equity Housing program. So I feel like our Sweat Equity Housing program is very unique and very different, because we're attacking different sources all at once, is like trying to preserve our traditional building techniques and practice with modern technology. We're also trying to preserve like the traditional value and cultural value of a home, and then also sustainability of thinking about the economic resilience of who we are as the Diné people. And that's what makes us very different from other housing organizations, is that we're thinking inside of the community for the people, like we're their voice, and we're trying to create that change and trying to create a model that will work for them. And so that's like our approach of Sweat Equity. And next slide. And yeah, thank you for allowing us to be here to share our story and who we are as Nááts'íilid Initiative, and what we're trying to accomplish through our organization. Like we're just like a bunch of awesome ladies that are working together, and, you know, we're creating change in the best possible way we can. And for us as women, you know, like we think about it, we think of our organization as a home, and that's what we want to continue to bring, you know, our female perspective into an organization that has probably been dominated by men more than women. And, you know, we're learning how to work together, and we're thinking about the community from the inside. Yeah.
Jana, that is very, very beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I know we have some questions in the chat. Kelly, have you been monitoring?
I have, but it seems that a lot of the other presenters and speakers have been answering the questions. So I'll read a few of them just to help clarify for anybody who has not seen this. So There were several acronyms used: NHA, which is the Navajo Housing Authority, and NAHASDA, which stands for Native American Housing Assistance and Self-Determination Act. There were many compliments to both Kara and Carmi about the construction of the homes and how bright and beautiful they are. There was a question on whether or not the local materials are more cost-effective than using commercial materials. Maybe you can answer that, Carmi.
So that's something that we're looking into, is the cost of local materials. So when we decided to use Ram Earth, trucking in one load or 1 ton of Ram Earth is probably going to cost us about $250 versus like $3,000, $5,000 for commercial tier materials of conventional build, like lumber, plyboard, and additional like nailing fasteners and stuff like that. So with that, using the local material, that reduces some of our costs from what we're looking at right now.
As well as they're running out of those materials. The wait time is crazy right now.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that we've also thought about too, is that we thought about like the cost of material and using conventional building material, the prices, and then also like the sustainability, like the longevity of material. And like all the way back in 2015, 2016, like the material was at a decent price and it wasn't as scarce as it is now. And the materials that we're looking at are local materials. We want to use like natural earth material, so that way we have a sustainability. And then also when we look at sustainability, is like, how do we look at durability? How do we look at homes that are being built as well? So we have like all these homes that are built with Ram Earth, and then we also have the like Anasazi runes that are local here to our communities, and they've been here like for hundreds of years, maybe even more. And that, you know, those homes, they're still, some of them are still standing. And, you know, that's the kind of home that we want, is like in 100 years, we want another family to be living in that home. We don't want it just to be like just another structure that's dilapidated, but we want it to be a continuous use home. That way, you know, we don't have like millions of homes all over the Navajo Nation that are falling apart, but we want homes that are taken care of and that can be used for generations. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also would like to add, like, one of the reasons that we I think Rammed Earth was chosen was that it's considered a low technology building method, meaning that anyone can build that home. All you would need to do is gather your materials, which is earth, which is sand, clay, rocks, water. And I think we're going to be using stabilized rammed earth, meaning just a little bit of concrete, but you just mix those all together to the perfect ratio, and you just pour it into your form, and you can hand tamp it. So you really wouldn't need any other heavy machinery. You would just need your hands and your foot and just have the energy to build that home. And so I think that's why we chose building this way, is that we could teach the community at large and have anyone from the community, regardless of their age, to come in and learn this way. We also really wanted to honor the earth, because, you know, the building materials that are available now, you don't know where they come from. But if we're able to gather those materials ourselves, we know like where they come from, and we'll also be able to have like we'll be able to gather them in a more respectful manner. And I think that's why we really chose Rammed Earth. But I also want to just mention that when we were wanting to build our home, they're supposed to be both built out of Rammed Earth, but because of the issues that we're facing getting grant funding, or not funding, but funding in general, is that the way that we're building is not really an acceptable form of building in the modern sense. And since there's not a lot of codes built around it, we're not able to secure federal funding. And we're also not a tribally designated housing institute like NHA or Navajo Housing Authority. So that really like takes us off the table of so many funding. And So we're really, and another thing that I think that Carmi didn't mention is that we're really looking at building for our family. So a lot of the families don't have monetary assets, or they don't have monetary funds. And so that's why we're really pushing this sweat equity building method, is where they're using their labor to pay for the homes. And so we really want to continue building off of this. But again, we have these problems that we're facing as a new organization, and we're trying to keep to our guns. We're truly trying not to sway ourselves to make it easier, because we know that we could make it easier for ourselves if we adapt different building methods or change the way that we want to build. But we really want to keep our community at the forefront, and we really want to keep our traditional building techniques and knowledge at the forefront. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you so much. There is some conversation in the chat about Section 184 Indian Home Loan Guarantee Programs. It sounds like individuals may not qualify for a mortgage if they're living in a traditional structure like you all are building, so that might not be exactly the right fit. And there's also a mention from Clay Rumboa, who is asking if you have needs for volunteers or any special expertise.
Yes, we're always looking for volunteers, and we're always looking for expertise. So like we don't have like a listing of what we're looking for. It's just like come as we go. We try to look for people. But we're always looking for like volunteers. We're always looking for people that are interested. And I think that's the good thing about us being as a nonprofit is, you know, we can network and we can communicate with people. We can reach out to as many people as we want to. And then we let them know what we were looking for. And then they reach out to their network and people. And then we start collaborating and working together. So I think that's like one of the best benefits of who we are as a nonprofit. And what makes us really different is that from other nonprofits that are working on the Navajo Nation, I feel like we're the only nonprofit that's actually on the Navajo Nation, inside the Navajo Nation. A lot of nonprofits, they're actually that work here on the Navajo Nation, they're registered like on a border town, or they're on the outside of the communities. They're not actually from the community. So I think that's one of the other things that makes us different. And that kind of keeps us Navajo, when we reach out to like Navajo Housing Authority and different to possibly become a partner, or how we could use federal funding or whatever, they have not responded to us. But that's something that we will continue to do. And that's one of the things that I think we feel like from our tribal leaders. Some of our tribal leaders, we've been told that we're stealing a lot of power. I don't want to say power, but you know, we're making our footprint known in the community, and that we can get funding to help community, especially with our microgrid project that we're helping with the Kiansa chapter. We have a solar microgrid project that's electrifying 25 homes. They live on tribal lands that is considered monumental land, so they can't get any type of infrastructure, but the infrastructure that can go on there are structures that are not permanent, which is like solar systems. So we do have that microgrid project, and we were told that, you know, Nááts'íilid is taking too much powers from the chapter and from local government entities. So I feel like, you know, we're making a statement by being a nonprofit, but you know, we're not also getting that support from our local leaders, but we're trying to push them, but they're, you know, they're kind of hesitant to work with us, and we could be an asset to them, but you know, they don't see us as an asset.
Yeah.
They will
And
eventually.
yeah, well, we are meeting with the Navajo Nation Land Department as well, because we did see home site lease access as a barrier. And so we are meeting with them to hopefully partner with them to create more educational programming around how to get a home site lease. And I'm not sure if you know, but you know, Navajo Nation government as a whole, we're lacking manpower. We have like a brain drain where a lot of our young people are moving off the reservation to get better jobs. Another barrier that people have who want to work for the Navajo Nation is housing. There's really not a lot of housing for our young people to go back to. And so if you look at our Navajo Nation website, you will see a whole lot of job vacancies open. And it's not that we don't have qualified people. We have a whole lot of qualified people. Look at Carmi, look at myself, look at our Indigenous research scholar. It's just that we don't have the infrastructure to house our people. And so I think, looking at how we can address these issues collectively, I think is key. And so working with nonprofits, looking with outside organizations, and working within the Navajo Nation government, and not seeing us as competitors, but seeing us as key players trying to tackle the same issue, I think is going to move us forward. And so, I'm really happy that we're working with the Navajo Nation Land Department on the home site lease process. And I'm crossing my fingers that NHA will see us as a partner, because I feel like there are a lot of Dene folks who want to live in hogans, who want to live with the earth around them. But right now, the way the system is, they're not able to do that. But we're wanting to fit that niche, and we want to create that service, and we want to give those tools to our people to build their own homes the way they want to, and the way that is culturally relevant to them. And so, yeah, and I just want to say thank you again, Carmi.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. We're at 12:37, but I want to stay on because there's a lot of information being exchanged in the chat, and I want to give everybody the opportunity to get the email things that are being exchanged. I put all of the contact details for Nááts'íilid initiative in the chat, so you can also get it from there as well.
And we will be following up with a survey that will also include the presenters' contact information and contact information for the Arizona Community Foundation as well. And I also wanted to thank Tamara Wright for being here from USICH, which is an interagency council specifically directed toward addressing homelessness. She is the representative for our region and has been a great partner in this work. So thanks for being here, Tamara. Are there any final questions from participants online who would like to leave a chat or a comment in the chat before we wrap up?
Can I quickly say what a wonderful presentation this was? Incredible, informative, engaging, compelling. So thank you so much, especially for outlining, I think, some of the current challenges that you all are facing, because I think with challenges, there's always areas for opportunity. And thank you, Mag. Thank you, Kelly Williams. Thank you, Serena, for creating this space where we can come together and listen, learn, engage, exchange information and see how we can help one another. This was incredible. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you for inviting us and allowing us to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing with us. All right, everyone, have a wonderful afternoon, and we look forward to continuing this conversation later in 2023 with future conversations about increasing affordable housing options on Arizona's tribal lands. Thanks for being here. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.